On the 23rd of June 1912, Alan Turing was born in Maida Vale, London. Turing would grow up to be an incredibly important member of the Government Code and Cipher School, now the Government Communications Headquarters, running the team of Hut 8 at Bletchley Park, who were responsible for cracking the Enigma code and shortening the Second World War by 2 or more years, saving many lives. His achievements were unfairly overshadowed and dismissed by his peers and the public, however, when Turing was arrested in 1952. At the age of just 41, Turing passed away when he committed suicide via cyanide poisoning. What led up to this unfortunate ending for such an important figure in modern computer science? That is what I will discuss in today's video. This is the story of the mistreatment of Alan Turing. As stated in the intro, Turing was born on the 23rd of June 1912 in Maida Vale, an affluent area of London, to Julius Matheson Turing and Ethel Sarah Turing. Both of Turing's parents had strong ties to India, with his father being a member of the civil service and his mother being the daughter of the chief engineer of Madras Railways. Turing had an older brother called John Ferrier, who was actually born in India. Despite the family's strong connection to India, Turing's parents decided that they wanted their children to be brought up and educated in Britain. Neither of the Turing brothers lived with their parents during their school years, and were instead hosted by other families locally. From 1922 to 1926, Turing attended Hazelhurst School in East Sussex, and prior to this he attended St Michael's, also in East Sussex. Turing's intelligence was recognised early on, including by the head teacher at his secondary school, Sherborne, which he attended from 1926 to 1931. When writing about Turing, Mr. C.N. Smith and Mr. C.L.F. Bowie, the two head teachers when Turing was a student at Sherborne, have praised him in the press following his achievements, although at the time some of his teachers were not so complimentary, with his natural sciences teacher criticising his extreme untidiness and his English teacher acknowledging his lack of interest in the subject. Some other subject teachers were much kinder in their appraisal, however. His maths teacher rightly commended his achievements, saying that he was the best mathematician in his set, and his physics teacher hoping that Cambridge will think of him as highly as they do. Outside of the classroom, Turing joined the choir as a treble and was an avid reader. In one academic year, he borrowed 33 books, of which most were non-fiction. He also used to create what one of his teachers would describe rather derogatorily as witch's brew in his school's science lab, and would spend copious hours in the school's library or his shared study. At this time, Turing was a boarder rather than living with a local family. As previously mentioned, Turing aspired to attend the University of Cambridge, which he did until 1934, achieving a first in mathematics. He was also awarded a scholarship, contrary to the doubt of his chemistry teacher. From 1936 to 1938, Turing studied a PhD at Princeton University alongside Alonzo Church, an American computer scientist and mathematician, in which they researched what would now come under the bracket of cryptology, although at the time it was considered mathematics. The research from this collaboration influenced computer science massively and led to the creation of basic programming and computing software. Leading up to the Second World War, the British government began to recruit suitable Oxbridge graduates who were likely able to decode enemy messages and signals. The GCACS, Government Code and Cipher School, deployed Turing to Bletchley Park on the 4th of September 1939, following Britain's declaration of war on Germany. Bletchley Park was the wartime facility for the decoding service and is located in Milton Keynes, England. Turing was more specifically based in Hut 8, where he led the team responsible for solving German naval messages known as the Enigma code. Turing's team included Connell, Hugh, O'Donnell, Alexander, Michael Arbuthnot Ashcroft, Joan Clark, Joseph Gillis and Harold Gollenbeck. I would like to say at this point that if I'm mispronouncing any of these people's names, I do apologise. The Enigma code was used to convey strategic military information by the Germans, and whilst Alan Turing and his team are often credited as being the first to crack the code, this is not entirely accurate. Polish mathematicians cracked it early on, even before the war, around 1932. Prior to the declaration of war in 1939, when the Polish knew that an invasion was imminent, their findings regarding the code were given to the British, which is how Hut 8 has become highly credited for decoding the Enigma code. The Enigma code was incredibly difficult to crack because, whilst Turing and his team had a rough idea of how the machine worked, they did not know which settings the Germans were using to create the messages. And to add to this, the Germans changed these settings every day. Since the Polish were able to crack the code, the machines had advanced greatly, meaning that much of their information was outdated, and so the British had to start some of it all over again. Turing was mostly focused on figuring out which settings the Germans used for the Enigma machine by predicting this through statistics. This was done using a bomb machine against the Enigma machine. Turing's main achievement was breaking the Enigma code used by U-boats in the North Atlantic, which threatened European food supplies and naval security. Additionally, the U-boats would have delayed the vital D-Day landings due to their stronghold on the Atlantic Ocean, and this would have therefore delayed the ending of the Second World War. Another incredibly important contribution of Turing's was the Turingery, which disrupted a new method of German communication referred to by the British as the tunny. The tunny allowed high-up German officials to communicate with those on the front line. The Turingery deciphered messages conveyed by the tunny, which contained detailed information on strategy, which was very important in defeating the enemy during the war. The algorithms used by the Turingery are the same as those used in early computers. Following the war, Turing started work at the National Physical Laboratory in Teddington, London, where he worked on the design of the automatic computing machine, which is often seen to be the predecessor to modern computers. He worked here between 1945 and 1947 before returning to Cambridge. The work produced at this time was not published until after Turing's passing. In 1948, Turing moved to Wilmslow, where he would eventually die, as he was appointed by the University of Manchester as a reader in mathematics. During his time working here, Turing looked at issues relating to artificial intelligence and proposed a so-called Turing test, which would define a machine as intelligent. Another important aspect of Turing's work was in biology, specifically in morphogenesis, which is the development of form and shape within an organism. In 1951, Turing published his work, The Chemical Basis of Morphogenesis, which is now considered to be a fundamental mathematical biological concept. This was the basis of many of biology's computer models, and whilst there was no means to do modelling on a computer at this time, Turing used partial differential equations to model the chemical reactions done by catalysts. This was also before DNA was properly understood and kind of known of, which meant that creating the model and explaining it was very challenging. In 1952, everything changed for Turing. In January of that year, Turing and Arnold Murray began an intimate relationship that would change Turing's life completely. Following a burglary of Turing's home, his homosexuality was revealed, which was illegal at the time and punishable under Section 11 of the Criminal Law Amendment Act of 1885. Turing was charged and convicted with the crime of gross indecency and was given the options of prison or hormonal therapy. The therapy was referred to as chemical castration and used what would now be called diethylstilbestrol to increase estrogen levels in the body. This drug is now not used today as it is proven to be carcinogenic and can cause rare vaginal and cervical cancers amongst women, just to name a few. The drug can also impair the reproductive system greatly. Following the revelation of Turing's homosexuality, which he was rather open about considering the time, he was stripped of his security clearance and barred from entering the United States. Turing has been engaged to a woman, however, Joan Clark, whom he worked with in Hut 8. He confessed his homosexuality to her, and although she was unfazed, Turing decided that he could not go through with marriage. On the 8th of June 1954, Turing was pronounced dead after being found by his housekeeper. A post-mortem revealed that he was likely killed by cyanide, and his death was put down to suicide. This cause of death is considered by quite a few people to be quite suspicious and unlikely, however. In 2009, 55 years after Turing's death, the British government apologised for the, quote, appalling treatment of Alan Turing, and on the 24th of December 2013, Queen Elizabeth II gave Turing a royal pardon, meaning that his conviction for gross indecency was no longer valid or in law. Turing's Law, which refers to 2017's Policing and Crime Act, by which homosexuals who were convicted prior to the decriminalisation of homosexuality were retrospectively pardoned. Turing has now been commemorated on the back of a £50 note. The way in which a war hero was treated because of his homosexuality really is disgusting and makes you think. And whilst it was illegal at the time, it was still completely wrong for all of his incredible achievements and the protections legally he was given to be taken from him because of this. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I do hope that you found it interesting, and if you did, then I would urge you to subscribe to my channel because this is the type of content that I tend to make. Oh, and I would definitely recommend checking out my Sidekicks of Science videos in the card above. Thank you.